Do you need this? Yeah.
Oh, that's a good thing.
That'd be helpful if you turned it off at first, but I can manage it, so. Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you very much for your patience and understanding with the late start tonight. I've just come to the community vigil for a fallen hero, El Dorado County Sheriff Deputy Brian Ishmael. And it's just impossible to put into words what a devastating loss this is for our community. It's such an unthinkable, senseless tragedy that defies comprehension. Deputy Ishmael was 37, a devoted husband to his wife Katie and father of 3 young children. He was a longtime resident of El Dorado County, a graduate of Ponderosa High School, and a current resident of Garden Valley. He was a 4-year veteran of the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office and previously worked for the Placerville Police Department. According to Sheriff DiAgostini, Brian worked in this community and lived in this community. He was personable, easy to talk to, kind, and always positive. At moments like this, it's so important for our community to come together, and I know that we will, and that we already are. And at this moment, that means supporting Deputy Ishmael's family with all of our hearts, honoring his memory, remembering his service and sacrifice, and never forgetting. And it means more than that, continuing to stand by and support all of our men and women in law enforcement, all of our first responders and their families who put their lives on the line every day for us and for our safety. If I could now ask everyone to please rise to your feet if you're able. And I'd ask you to join me in a moment of silence to honor Deputy Ishmael's memory. Our thoughts and our prayers are with his family tonight. At this time, if you could please remain standing, I'd like to invite to the stage El Dorado District 1 Supervisor John Heidel to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please place your hand over your heart or salute as appropriate. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty with justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. I'm Kevin Kiley, and I represent parts of El Dorado County as well as Sacramento and Placer counties at the California State Capitol. And I want to begin by thanking tonight Jill Ritzman, who's the General Manager for the Cameron Park CSD, and her great staff for getting everything set up tonight. You really went above and beyond, and we sincerely thank you. I also want to thank Jill and Laurel from the El Dorado County Chamber. They were actually scheduled to have a joint mixer at this very building tonight, and we sort of stole their date, time, and location. But they've graciously agreed to reschedule, and the new date for their event is November 21st. I also want to make sure everyone saw, as many of you who have been here for a little while now have surely seen by now, we have a resource center set up in the dance room back there. You can stop by tonight. You have info from CAL FIRE, some of our local fire safe councils, the El Dorado County Working Group, as well as materials from United Policyholders, which is a nonprofit dedicated to helping insurance consumers. There's also tables from my office, Commissioner Laura's office, as well as the Board of Supervisors. You'll find the bathrooms in back as well, out the doors and to the left. And if anyone gets tired of standing, there's an overflow room back there as well where we're live streaming the event. To give you a brief overview of what to expect for the evening, we're going to have a presentation from Commissioner Laura, followed by brief comments from the Board of Supervisors, and then some members of the El Dorado County Working Group who are able to attend. And after that, we'll open the floor for comments from the audience. As everyone here knows all too well, Our state is in the midst of a crisis, one felt most acutely by the residents of El Dorado County and surrounding communities. Increasing fire insurance cancellations have been documented in 25 counties, all of which are in rural Northern California. El Dorado County has had the second most cancellations of any county in the state after only Placer. My office receives calls and emails every day from residents who are forced to cope with the dire consequences. One resident reported to me that the only available private insurance options to cover her home would cost 3 times what she was currently paying. Another constituent said even the FAIR plan, the state's insurer of last resort, could only offer rates that were 3 times higher than her previous rate. I had one constituent email me just before tonight's forum saying that for a retired person like her, all the expenses are accounted for the coming year: insurance, vehicle registration, property tax, etc. Then she wrote, all of a sudden, with short notice, you have to pay an additional $3,000 expense. She called this a great dilemma, and I'm sure many people here tonight feel the same way. Many homeowners find their premiums multiplying despite acting as responsibly as possible, doing everything they could to harden and protect their homes, even as the government has not done everything it could to mitigate the risk of wildfires. What's more, these extreme hardships for individual homeowners threaten to cascade across our communities as houses become unsaleable or property values diminish, lowering property tax revenues and depleting county treasuries. Tonight's forum was organized by leaders in county and state government along with a variety of stakeholders. We have Todd White, who's the chair of the El Dorado County Republican Party, Dr. Josh Elder, who heads the El Dorado County Democratic Party, Debbie Manning with the El Dorado Hills Chamber of Commerce, Laurel Brentbaum with the El Dorado County Chamber of Commerce, and Deborah Miller, who's with the El Dorado County Association of Realtors. Collectively, our goals are, first, to provide useful and usable information where we can. Second, to hear directly from you to assure that those of us in policy roles fully understand the problem in all of its depth and dimensions. And third, and most importantly, to build consensus on a path forward, one leading to relief for all of the folks in our county who are hurting. Because talk, discussion, ideas are not enough. This is a problem that requires swift action and bold solutions aimed at stabilizing rates, protecting homeowners, and providing the right incentives for all parties to minimize the risks to property and human life. I will say that this year the legislature did pass, and the governor just signed, Assembly Bill 1816. That's a bill that takes a few modest steps. It gives homeowners additional time to find replacement coverage if your policy is canceled. It doubles the amount of state coverage afforded to homeowners if your insurance goes insolvent in the event of a fire or other disaster, and it provides tax credit incentives to insurers that offer policies in high-risk areas to help improve options and lower prices for consumers. That's a good thing, but there is much more to do, and that includes addressing the root of the problem. The legislature and governor must finally give the fire protection the priority it deserves. I mean real long-term planning, not surface-level political reaction, so that the scourge of catastrophic wildfires does not continue to ravage communities across our state. We'll be hearing tonight first from California's elected insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara. Commissioner Lara, I want to thank you for accepting my invitation to be here tonight. Welcome to the 6th Assembly District. Commissioner Lara leads the California Department of Insurance, the largest consumer protection agency in the state, responsible for regulating the insurance market and fielding consumer complaints. He is a statewide elected official, California's 8th insurance commissioner since voters created the position in 1988. Now, it's important to note, he only took this office this past January and is not responsible for the crisis facing so many members of our community.
We're working on it.
But Commissioner Lara, we are all looking to you and your department for answers and guidance and are ready to work with you however we can. So I'm very grateful you've taken the time to personally hear from many of my constituents this evening. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. It's great to be here with you all. Thank you, Assemblyman Kiley, for the kind invitation. I want to take a moment as well to thank your staff who have been very diligent in working with us to make sure we make this event happen and make sure it's a success for all of you. I also want to take a moment for those of you that, I know we started a little late due to Deputy Sheriff Ishmael's vigil. I want to say we were here scheduled to be here at 6. I am going to have to run. There's 3 new fires in Southern California that started this afternoon, so I have to head back. But my staff is here and will be here through the entire night to answer your questions. And I want my staff to raise their hand who are in the audience. If my staff can raise their hand, if you can see them. And at any time, if you want to answer a question, to ask them a question, you can do that anytime through the program. I know some of you have obligations and need to head out before 8, or if you just want to take the moment to ask one of our staff to have a conversation, we are going to be here as well. So I want to start with the presentation that we put together that really surmises what we've been seeing since we took office. This is one of many town halls that we've had up and down the state of California. As Assemblyman Kiley mentioned, this is happening acutely in rural California, but this is a California-wide problem. We have seen this happen all the way in San Diego, Santa Barbara, San Bernardino, as we know there's a fire there going on, LA County. So really, it is up to the entire state for all of us to come up together to the solution. It should not just rest in the hands of our rural Californians. This is a California problem, and we need to work together to fix it. These are some of the numbers and trends that we've been seeing in El Dorado County. We see that non-renewals are up to 1,500 non-renewals in El Dorado County by insurance companies last year. That's a 12% increase. And by the way, this does not take into account 2019 numbers. We know this is only going to continue to go up. We in the department have seen more than 100 rate increases filed by insurers statewide in 2017 and 2018. Again, that doesn't take into account 2019. So this is a major problem for us across the state. We know that fewer homes in El Dorado County are insured by traditional homeowner insurance companies. That's if you can find insurance. And we know that the FAIR Plan is not a comprehensive traditional insurance company that you can depend on to be able to provide comprehensive coverage. And we do have folks here from the FAIR Plan, I believe. There you go. I'm pointing you out. But, this is not to castigate anybody. This is just what we've been seeing through over 1,000 people that we met with up and down California. These are the issues that we're seeing many people face, and these are things that we're looking to fix. Some of you have seen some of the slides when we did this event in Placer, but I wanted to remind you all, for those of you that haven't, that California has seen 10 of the 20 most destructive wildfires in California history have occurred over the last 4 years. And as risk increases, the cost of insurance increases and the availability decreases. Insurers consider, and this is where it's really hurting us, insurers consider the very recent past to underwrite and to determine rates for the very near future. To date, we've totaled $25 billion in losses in 2017, 2018. So what we want to do is continue to hopefully not have these tremendous fires so that we can let the market adjust itself. But this is unfortunately what we're living with today. And residential underwriting, many of you have experienced this yourselves. We know that the old school way of insuring your home and having insurance companies come in, if they even come in to inspect your house, we know that that's an actual problem as well. They would take into account your individual parcel. They would look at your roof, they would look at your defensible space, and that was a traditional way of you being able to obtain insurance. We know that's completely changed. And now it's done through satellite imagery of a region that evaluates slope, fuel load, and the type of fuel and access. You first have to get sift through a satellite image to be even considered for coverage. And we want more transparency in that process for consumers. And we have an idea of what we want. And unfortunately, that's the new way of how insurance companies are looking at your region. Not going down to the granular level to look at what you've actually done to harden your home. First, you have to get sifted to that. And as you can see, that is a reason, some of the reasons why your fire risk scores your fire line scores are going up, and why some of you are being denied. Because they're not even taking the time to come in to your neighborhood, to your individual parcel, to see what you've done to harden your home. So we know these are the things that we've seen continue to be a problem as we talk to folks. We know that the non-renewal process is completely unfair to consumers. And we know that in many cases, there is no individual consideration to your tenure or claims history. I've heard time and time again so many stories of, I've had my insurance, my home insurance over 30 years. And next thing you know, I get a letter and I'm being dropped without any consideration to my history with that insurance company. There's no consideration to your pre-fire mitigation or fire hardening, right? Many of you have nobody's come to your community, to your home or your parcel to see what you've done, but you still get a letter saying that you're being non-renewed. And even if some of you have no individual change to your risk whatsoever, or your claim history, you've never had a claim, you're still being dropped without any consideration whatsoever. So we know that the current process is completely unfair to consumers. And what's also harming us is that there's no clear statewide standards for fire-resistant structures or mitigated properties. This is something that we need to work on with the governor and the legislature to at least give us a baseline minimum of what a community, not just the individual parcel, but what a community needs to do to lower the fire risk, to lessen their risk. And we need those critical standards, so then we know what communities need to do. And those standards need to be worked on with the insurance industry, with first responders, with local community leaders, so that we're all in agreement on what the community needs to do to lessen that risk, to keep the admitted market, our insurance companies, in our communities. But we need to get the insurance companies in the room and have a conversation about what they also want to see to mitigate, so that we're not just being dropped without any consideration. This is something that we're asking the governor to do through his executive order, and create a strike team to do this as quickly as possible. We know that there's insufficient coverage limits with the FAIR Plan. The FAIR Plan is now agreed, after conversations with them, to increase the coverage limits, which they hadn't increased since the 70s. So now we're going from 1.5 million to 3 million, which makes more sense for us. And we also know that many homeowners are on fixed incomes, purchased their homes, and obtained insurance long before today's convergence of all these issues. So we know that many of you were either pushed out of the urban core, retired in these communities, and long before this extreme weather was happening, long before climate change became an issue, where we had this extreme heat, then we have this extreme wet weather, and we have these winds that are now causing these fires. So we need to take into consideration that this didn't exist before. And now we have to figure out how do we curtail that and keep it to consideration that this is a new reality that people had not factored in that are living in these communities. So as Senator Kiley was talking about, several bills have been passed over the last couple of years to help address some of these issues. These bills get to some of the peripheral issues that Senator Kiley was talking about, but we need to do major structural reform. We need to give consumers much more power and authority, give the Department of Insurance much more authority to get information that we need, and to be able to ensure that we mandate insurance companies to cover homes that have been properly mitigated and hardened, which is something that we're asking for now and that we currently don't have the authority to do. These list of bills create model defensible space requirements. They guarantee 2 renewals for following a total loss, which is important. Senator Kiley mentioned AB 1816, which gives us 75-day notice. Before, it was a 45-day notice, which is ridiculous. That's not enough time to allow you to shop and to figure out how you're going to get coverage. We actually, in the department, recommend 180 days, which should be much more appropriate, but we'll take the 75 days going forward, but we're going to go back to the legislature asking for an increase to make it 180 days. You should have a couple months to be able to figure out what we're going to do, allow you to call your assembly member's office, the Department of Insurance, to help guide you on what your best options are, as opposed to 45 or now 75 days. So in the governor's signing message of AB 1816, he put it very bluntly and very clear. We need to do more, and we're going to work together with myself next year in the legislature to get additional solutions. Guess what? I have those additional solutions right here. So We gave that to him already. We want common sense legislation. We want to provide financial incentives to middle-income homeowners and assistance to seniors and low-income homeowners to mitigate their properties. We know it costs thousands of dollars to be able to mitigate your property, harden your home, buy the appropriate shutters, fix your roof, fix your gutters, and that's if you're actually able to do that yourself. If you're a disabled person, if you're a disabled veteran, if you're a senior, you need to pay somebody to do that, and that just elevates the cost. So we as a state need to figure out either a tax incentive program, a loan forgiveness program, or a subsidy for our low income and our disabled seniors to help them mitigate their home. Because we can pass regulations until we're blue in the face or red in the face. I want to be bipartisan here. And if you can't afford to make these changes, it makes no difference if local governments pass ordinances or we pass ordinances at the state level. We need to figure out how we help you pay for these mitigations. We want to require insurance companies that write your home. If you perform that acceptable mitigation standards, that insurance companies have to write you a policy. It's fair. We're not asking them to write absolutely everyone, but we want you, if you've done everything possible to mitigate your home, you should be able to find insurance in the admitted market. And given the fact that insurance companies, for the last 15 years prior to this happening, were paying out 50 cents on the dollar and making a lot of money, that they should be able to work with us so that if you mitigate your home, we mandate that you still write a home in that community. It is fair, especially after so many of you have told me that you've done what the insurance company wants you to do to mitigate your home, and guess what? You still get that non-renewal letter. So it's not fair. You can't have it both ways. You can't ask a consumer to do the home hardening, invest their money to do it, and then you still drop them. That should not be happening, and we want the authority to be able to do that. We also want to increase the time, as we said, to have you shop around when you get a non-renewal up to 180 days. And we want to require greater transparency in rate setting and non-renewals. And what does that mean is we need to require more information from the insurance companies so that we can know how they're incorporating these fire line risk scores and their fire risks in their rate setting. So every time they come to a department, we are now requiring them to do that and give that information so that we can be better informed on how these non-renewals are affecting rates. So another part of our work plan that we're doing is we need to improve the FAIR plan. We need to make sure that we increase the limits, which we're gonna be able to do by next year, correct? So next year we're gonna increase the limit to 3 million. We want to make the FAIR plan coverage comprehensive. If you're going to be sent to the FAIR plan as the plan of last resort, then it should be a comprehensive insurance plan for your home, where you don't have to shop around for additional coverage or wraparound coverage, which only costs you more money because guess what? You're paying more administrative fee on top of other administrative fees. And so the FAIR plan needs to be a comprehensive plan so you get one plan with the FAIR plan and not be forced to have to buy wraparound insurance. It's not fair, and it only increases the cost for you, the consumer. We want to allow and I know this is going to sound really archaic, but we want the FAIR plan policyholders to be able to make monthly payments and pay by credit card to provide flexibility, which currently is not an option. You have to pay every 4 months. I mean, being able to pay monthly and use a credit card to pay is a no-brainer to me, but we're working with them on making sure that happens. We want to add more consumer representations to the FAIR board plan so consumers have a greater voice within the FAIR plan board. It just makes sense given what's been happening. We need more of that consumer perspective on the board to be able to help inform the board of what's really happening at the ground level. So that's our plan with the FAIR plan. In terms of wildfire risk scores, many of you have these, you know what your fire risk score is. You have no idea how you receive that fire risk score. You have no idea how to mitigate to lessen that score or to figure out what you need to do to be able to make sure that you can appeal your score if you think that they didn't take into consideration changes that you've done. So what we want to do is we want to require greater transparency for these wildfire risk models. We want to require these models to take into account community and individual mitigation. Current models do not do this. They just somehow, we don't even have the information. We don't know where these risk scores come from, or if they're even validated, and if they're even appropriate for the community. And we want to require these models to be open for public review, so that local governments, the local communities, groups that are being formed, can actually look and see how they came up with these numbers. Currently, there's a black box that we can't break into to see what's really going on, what algorithms are they using, what justifications they're using. So we want greater transparency so the public and your government can see and validate these risk scores. We want to allow homeowners to appeal the risk score if they believe it's based upon wrong information. It's the fair thing to do. You get a fire risk score number, and if you feel that this is done with erroneous information or not up-to-date information, you should be allowed to appeal, just like in any other thing, in any other process. So we want to be able to do that. And we want to give consumers more time to address mitigation issues so they can lower their risk score. So if you get a risk score and you feel like, okay, what do I need to do to lower my score? You should be able to have that plan with you as well. It makes complete sense. These are things, we're not asking for the world here. We just want to give people more transparency. We want to give constituents like yourself a greater opportunity to understand why your score is your score, and if there's an opportunity for you to mitigate it and to appeal it. And so that we can try to keep the insurance industry in our community. This is what we feel is important, so we can work hand in hand. It makes sense for us. And so how does the department respond? As many of you know, unfortunately, we've created these strike teams where we come out to the community. I'll tell you that since I got elected, this is the first time we've done this and brought the Department of Insurance out of the LA office and Sacramento, and actually have taken them to rural California, meet with all of you, answer your questions, so that we're having that one-on-one dialogue, given that we know this is a problem that's only going to continue to exacerbate. So we've to this day, we've met over 1,500 people face-to-face, all over different counties. I was in Quincy last week, if you know where that's at, in Plumas County, some of the most beautiful parts of our state. We have a consumer hotline, and I know some people get anxiety when I say a 1-800 number, but we have live people behind that number. The wait time is no less than 2 minutes. We have people who are there 9 to 5? 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, answering your questions. If you have a claim, if you feel that you've been unjustly wrong, we can investigate your claim. We can also try to help you and give you information as you're trying to make the appropriate decisions for you and your family. We do our disaster response, where our enforcement team comes out as well. Many people don't know that we have an entire insurance fraud unit with investigators and officers. So if you feel that you've been a victim of some sort of insurance fraud, call our department. We can direct you to our enforcement unit, and our enforcement unit is at our strike team meetings as well. And we set up our local assistance centers where we deploy our staff to the local shelters and assistance centers. We were just in Calamesa down in Southern California, and Silmar for those fires last week as well. So this is how we respond to the fires, but in between, we actually come out and have these conversations with you to hear one-on-one from what you're experiencing, because what we're doing is gathering all this information. When the legislature reconvenes in January, Assemblyman Kiley and I join, and we work together to get these bills passed and the changes that we want done. And so this is the number. Once again, I wanted to make sure you knew we have live people. Those are people that work in the department. They're not models, and although they should be, but our staff that are trained to answer questions that you might have from the department. So I wanted to thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. Again, we have our staff here. As you're asking questions, if you don't feel comfortable writing down a question or can't see the line, as I can't because I think that print's too small, but you can also, raise your hand and we'll try to address your questions. We have my deputy commissioner here, Tony Signorelli, who will be here answering questions. My special counsel, Joe Lauscher, who have been in the department way longer than I have and can help answer questions as we go into the Q&A portion. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time again. Assemblyman Kiley, thank you for your time.
So, Commissioner Laura, you said something that I really liked, which is about tax incentives, or you might call it tax relief. And you look at folks who are here tonight. You have people who have been living in this county in the same home for years, maybe decades, and have all of a sudden are hit with these just sudden, unexpected, extremely burdensome costs. And it's through no fault of their own. It's because of outside events. And that's a very small percent of the overall population of the state that's being forced to carry this disproportionate burden. So it strikes me that this is exactly the sort of situation where we should have some sort of tax credit, a refundable tax credit, that folks can claim if they've been severely impacted to make up for the increased costs that they're having to bear. Would you be open to some form of tax relief or using the tax code to help out folks who have been hit really hard?
Is this working? Okay. Thank you, Senator Kiley, for that question. I think every option has to be put on the table. There's no question that our homeowners need relief. And being open to having a discussion about tax credits, loan forgiveness programs, and even, I'm going to say it, subsidies for our low-income seniors and disabled veterans and disabled community members that can't afford not only the rate hikes, but the mitigation part, which is what's going to save you and save your property after or during a fire. And so we want to be able to incentivize good behavior. And one way to do that is looking at tax credits and tax incentives. And you're right, this is happening roughly around, I think around 10% of the state is going through these issues. But where it's happening, it's acutely really dismantling local governments. I mean, when you look at the local economy, if you can't find insurance for your home, you can't sell your home. If you can't sell your home, that means that impacts the entire real estate market, which then impacts local government's resources, which many of them are already strapped, especially in our very rural communities. And so I tell you, everything's on the table, and I would definitely support policy that would give us a tax credit and tax incentives for our homeowners to allow them to be able to not only mitigate their homes, harden their homes, and be able to offset these increases and rate hikes that they're experiencing now.
That's great to hear. Thank you very much. Now, we're very fortunate to have, we're going to move to the comments in just a few moments, but we're fortunate to have 3 of our county supervisors here tonight to give us the perspective of El Dorado County. And so I'd at this point like to welcome to the stage District 1 Supervisor John Heidel, District 2 Supervisor Shiva Frenson, and District 4 Supervisor Lori Parlin.
Okay, I'd like to start with a couple of compliments. I want to compliment both the Insurance Commissioner, Ricardo Lara, for showing up this evening and to share with us what he's seeing at the state level and what his plans are, and our Assemblyman Kevin Kiley, because it's very important that all of the government agencies work together to make sure that the people's voice is heard. We've received at the county offices a lot of emails, obviously, about cancellations, non-renewals, whatever you want to call it. And we've struggled with what can the county do to try to better provide information and help people. And the answer is about all we can do is try to make more defenses associated with vegetation management and defensible space, and make sure your voices are transferred to the appropriate levels at either the state or at the Assembly or the Senate, state Senates, so that your interests are heard, they can be responded to, The 1-800 number is a great opportunity for people to really call and see what they can do. But the things that we've done at the county are primarily focused on what we do for vegetation management, defensible space, and how do we make sure from the county's perspective we're doing our part. So many of you know we've passed a vegetation management ordinance. The enforcement of that's going to start in the first part of next year, April, May. We have code enforcement officers who are going to be actively looking at this. And we recognize at the county level it puts a burden on a lot of people who've lived in rural areas without having to have that defensible space. But it's required to protect your neighbor's interest, the community's interest, the broader interest of everybody involved. So that's why we're going to try to enforce those kinds of provisions, make sure that your neighbor cleans up his space. There's actually a good neighbor clause in the ordinance. But those are the things the county can do, is to try to make sure that we make as fire-safe community as we can. And that includes encouraging people to join our fire-safe councils and get involved with those. And our fire-safe councils in the county have grown tremendously. We have an El Dorado County Fire-Safe Council, which is the mother organization of how everything works, and then we've got umbrella organizations around that. I happen to live in a fire-safe community that was started because of a council that worked on trying to make provisions to make us more defensible from wildlands. But yet the insurance provisions do not consider those things today, as the commissioner pointed out. So we've got to get to the point that it's realistic when people do the hard work to make their property defensible, when they put in the effort to make sure that they have as clean a properties as they can and their neighbor is protected as well, then that needs to be reflected in something with respect to being able to get a reasonably priced premium on your fire insurance. So that's kind of the summary I'll provide, and pass it on.
That was a summary. I just want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. It just shows what an important issue this is in our county. When you look at the numbers, El Dorado County has been hit exceptionally hard by this fire insurance issue. And so I appreciate, Commissioner Lara being here, Assemblyman Kiley hosting this forum for us, so that we can get information out to you and do some question and answers. I will say that when our board was talking about the vegetation management ordinance, that was one of my biggest concerns, and I hesitated because I wanted to make sure that folks that are on a fixed income or folks that need some help will get that help. So I was glad to see that in the presentation, and I'm looking forward to, this is just the beginning, I hope, and that we keep this momentum going and that we get some solutions for this really important topic.
Good evening. Thank you all for taking your evening and coming to this town hall. I want to thank Assemblyman Kiley for your leadership and hosting this event, even though we attracted everyone from the El Dorado County that may not be in your district, and your flexibility with some of the last-minute changes we had. I also want to thank Commissioner Lara for being here and your presentation. That's great. You can find the letter that the Board of Supervisors have submitted in the back, and I'm not going to repeat that. And what I am hoping and requesting our commissioner tonight is to implement those bold and tough legislative policies that would mitigate the risk and enable more residents to get fire insurance. Because I know that residents in my district are being impacted. This is real. It hits every person. The responsible members of our community are being hit. And one thing that I did not see on that presentation is a timeline. When can we implement this? This is impacting our residents. Tax credits are a great idea for mitigation, but when it comes to the real insurance, I believe that there's got to be some risk that the insurance companies take, so the tax money, which is all of our money, whether it comes from the local level, state level, or federal level, is not spent on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, supervisors. We'll now begin public comment. I'd like to ask the Deputy Commissioner and DOI staff members, as well as the representative from the California Fair Plan who's here today, to please come to the stage. And if you'd like to take a moment just to introduce yourselves.
Good evening. My name is Tony Signorelli, Deputy Commissioner for the Consumer Services and Market Conduct Branch at the Department of Insurance. My team handles the 1-800 call center, the consumer hotline, and consumer complaints, as well as disaster response.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm Joel Loucher. I'm a senior advisor with the department. I've worked for the department over 30 years in a number of capacities and hope to do all we can to help you this evening. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Phil Irwin. I'm a public relations representative for the California Fair Plan. I live in El Dorado County. I care deeply about this issue, and I feel serving this role is going to put me in a position to be make the biggest impact as an advocate for you all.
Thank you very much. So we have 2 mics in the crowd being handled by staff. They'll come to you, so raise your hand if you have a question, and please just let them hold the mic for you. We also have comment cards if you'd rather write your question. So you have to flag down a member of the staff, and they'll provide you with a card, and we'll make sure that those get asked. We're going to begin the questions with Dawn Lesser, actually, who's here on behalf of United Policyholders. They've been a valuable resource and have information on the table back there. So if Dawn is here. There we go. And if you'd like to ask the first question, go ahead.
Good evening. I'm not here to ask a question, but I'm just here to remind you about United Policyholders, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan insurance consumer group that was formed after the Oakland Hills fires back in 1991. And some of you may be most familiar with United Policyholders because we have gone into the wildfire communities after the fires and held and are still holding what we call Roadmap to Recovery workshops, helping people recover from the fires in the sense of helping them make their insurance claims, helping them understand what kind of information they have to provide, how they meet their obligations to report their claims, what they do when their claims don't get paid satisfactorily. That's the biggest thing that UP is known for, but we also have an enormous amount of very useful information for people who are confronted with non-renewals, cancellations, or who are having a hard time finding insurance. And so I would urge you to go to our website, which is www.uphelp.com, and you'll see that there is a state-by-state resource there, and if you just click on California and then you go to the information that you need, you'll see some great tips that should be helpful. Also, we've put some handouts for those of you who haven't seen them. We put some handouts in the back room concerning both what to do when you're considering buying a fair plan policy and what other coverage you might want to try to get, and also some tips on what to do if you're canceled or non-renewed. So at this point, I'll shut up and just be back there later if any of you have any questions that I can help with. It's UP, like United Policyholders, uphelp.com. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also want to acknowledge that Josh Elder, chair of the El Dorado County Democratic Party, has arrived. He and his counterpart with the El Dorado County Republican Party, Todd White, have both been part of this working group. It's great to see folks working together to help us find solutions. A few of the other members were planning to be here tonight, but were deeply affected by the recent tragedy and weren't able to make it. But they've been doing great work to try to help us find a path forward here. And here's Todd White himself.
Okay, so appropriately, I sat on Kevin's right, and Josh sat on Kevin's left, just to keep things fair. But I really want to thank Assemblyman Kiley for holding this forum, and Commissioner Lara for being here. We have representatives from all over Alberta County. We've got the crew from South Lake Tahoe, and we have City Councilman Jason Collin over to my right, who's actually a Democrat, but this is a bipartisan deal. But 2 main things. We heard the commissioner talk about the FAIR plan, of which I'm a customer up in Pollock Pines. Maybe you could explain what the FAIR Plan is all about and what it actually entails. And also, I heard a comment about climate change, which is wonderful, but what are we going to do to hold PG&E accountable for actually doing their job and trimming underneath those power lines? So the climate change doesn't account for actually trimming underneath the power lines, which obviously hasn't been done. And we got Terry Girardi here, but I just really would like every legislature of any political party to refuse to take campaign contributions from Pacific Gas and Electric. So thank you.
I'll take the first part of your question on the FAIR Plan.
Maybe could we just get Dr. Elder's comments, and then we'll answer the questions posed by Todd.
Thank you, Kevin Kiley and Commissioner Laura. I'm Josh Elder. I'm an ER doc, Army Reserve officer, and a proud Democrat, El Dorado Democrat here in El Dorado County. About a year ago, I decided to take the reins of the Democratic Party, in part because I realized that there's a lot of emergencies in our community. And I appreciate Todd White stepping forward with me to kind of lead on these bipartisan issues that affect our community. I think this issue is nonpartisan. I see so much of what affects all of us in this issue. I was one of the main doctors on during the Paradise Fires at UC Davis, and seeing the devastation in people's lives, and then seeing the devastation now in people's livelihoods and people's residents, this is something we all need to get behind and need to step forward on. And so one of the things I'd like to say is, as an ER doc, I tend to recognize when emergencies exist. This is an absolute emergency in our California. And I will say that along those lines, something we need to look forward to with the help of Commissioner Laura and with Kevin Kiley is the idea that this needs to be a state of emergency. I understand that there are legislative restrictions that we have currently, but if we declare this as a state of emergency, we have the ability to move forward in ways that we can't today. So my question to the members on stage is, how can we make this a state of emergency so we can start to move forward in ways that help and protect the citizens of California? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elder. So we had a question about the FAIR Plan and then a broader question about the state of emergency. Mr. Irwin, would you like to address the FAIR Plan question?
Yes, thank you. First off, the FAIR Plan is here to provide stability in the marketplace in a time of need as a last resort. Primarily we're here as a stopgap. We're not a long-term solution. We know there's opportunities to enhance our products and our service. We're an organization with roughly 60 employees to date, and we're working to incorporate new discounts and ways to make our pricing and our processes more reasonable. To address some of the comments the Commissioner made, really the last time we were in the spotlight was in 1994 after the Northridge earthquake. We do not we have more functional technology, but literally like a credit card payment is something that we just selected a vendor and we're working on the programming to bring that up to speed to offer more payment options. We are looking to incorporate like monthly options and just some additional options to make it more flexible for the customer, as well as looking to increase coverages. And an example of a discount that we're working on is today the only discount on our books is what's called a Firewise discount, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. What's more prominent in El Dorado County specifically is the California Fire Council. So we're working to Fire Safe Council. So we're working with the Fire Safe Council to develop a criteria. Their board is working on this project right now to develop a criteria to present to us to make the Fire Safe Council eligible for a discount. So we're looking for ways to make our pricing more reasonable. As far as making our product more comprehensive, we're mandated by law not to compete. We're not designed to compete. So as an example, if we offered the full liability coverage today, since there are admitted carriers that offer that, we would be directly competing with them. So until that law changes or that's not something that we're wired to offer. And the reality is if we did expand the coverage within our program, we would have to expand our infrastructure as well. So again, that would be something that would be necessary for us to add cost. But the other benefit to the way it's designed today, by using the carriers that provide the DIC policy, the companion policy, which I think most of you are aware of, the benefit you have from having that with another carrier is those carriers also provide auto insurance in your umbrella. So you, by having the design the way it is today, the way it's working is you get a discount on your auto and your homeowners, on your auto and your DIC policy that way, as well as your umbrella, for having that bundled. So if we were a full comprehensive policy, you would not be eligible for the discount at that level. So there is an advantage to having it structured the way it is. We're not closed off to any option, and really that's why I'm here today, is because I'm working hard to explore ways for us to make, while we're a stopgap, while we're a short-term community or solution, we want to make this more reasonable. I know since December, I've been talking to people in El Dorado County every day, all day, and as well as the excellent insurance professionals are in this room today. That we had a meeting today with 150 insurance professionals. It's supposed to be a 3-hour meeting. It lasted 4 hours. I've never seen a sales group stay in a meeting longer than they had to, and they're highly engaged. That just speaks to the integrity that the professionals have in this community to do the right thing for you. Another important thing is to shop every option possible, because it is a more expensive purchase for you. Your coverage is going to be more if this is your circumstance. It's important to explore every possible option to know that you've got, although it's more, you've got the best coverage at the best price, because there are differences out there, and it's important that in every situation, even if you really have a super awesome broker you're working with, it's important to shop. And you may come right back to them and say, you know what, I'm glad I shopped because I know you were the right choice. And really, the culture of the insurance agents in this market right now, there's no competition. We're all here to help you. Nobody is fighting over anything. Nobody feels good about the circumstance in our industry. We want to help you. We want to see this become better, a better solution, and that's not going to change until the carriers feel comfortable coming back.
I'm sorry, if we could please not yell questions from the audience. We have folks who are going around with microphones. So we have a question back there.
Stand up. Okay. Please stand. Thank you. My name's Josephine. I'm a resident in Placerville, and it looks like my power went on. So the ISO rating, I've been trying to research that for a couple weeks. It's actually on the El Dorado Hills Fire Department website. It comes from the Insurance Services Office. I don't know if that's the same as the Insurance Commissioner's Office, but they provide the rating through their Public Protection Classification Program. So you can read about it on the website. Tell Larry, your boss, that's out there. If I can research it, I don't know why he doesn't know. Number two, so I'm sure most people are willing to mitigate, around our homes, et cetera, and things like that. But I just want to see PG&E mitigate or be taken over, because they're responsible for a percentage of the fires, and they can't wait 10 years to do it. And I'm very emotional about this issue because I'm a single woman. I'm not going to fall in a low-income category to help me pay to clear my trees. It's only 1/4 of an acre. I fall in the middle and don't get public assistance or anything. And it's hard to survive that way, but I do it and work more than one job. So you need to find something for us too if we lose the insurance, because this is going to come back to bite all of you for leading us into another recession, just like the people lost their homes with the negative amortization loans. So you know about it now. You've got to fix it, or the economy of the Western United States is going to fall like the whole country did with the home crisis. It's all good, because we're going to walk away from the homes. We're not going to give an SHIT about it. We're going to walk away. And we've got to retire, but we don't want to live in trees at that point. So that's just my comment.
Thank you, ma'am, and I wholeheartedly agree that we have folks who are being impacted because of things far beyond their control, like the failures of PG&E, which have been egregious, like the failures of our state government to hold PG&E accountable, and like our failures to properly invest in forage management in order to create safer conditions. So those are things that we need to turn around right away. Did any of the folks in the county want to address the first part of that question? Okay. Thank you for the information. All right, next question. Yes, over here.
Hi. I have been most of my adult life in either mortgages or in the insurance business. I do remember the 1994 Northridge earthquake when essentially all insurance companies in the state stopped writing new business, put a moratorium on it, primarily because they were required to write insurance, earthquake insurance, in conjunction with their fire policy. The state, what they did is they got the Earthquake Authority to become the writer of earthquake insurance. So pretty much all the farmers and State Farm and everybody else stopped writing earthquake, and they put it to the state authority. One of the main issues that I seem to have, there's two things I wanted to talk about, is the reinsurance companies are going into the insurance companies and telling them, you have to lower your risk, okay, or we're going to cancel your reinsurance, which is a big deal for insurance companies because they don't carry all the risk. They only carry like maybe the first 50,000 or maybe even more, I don't know, depending upon what their policies are with reinsurance. Is there any way to get an authority in the state to write reinsurance, maybe just for brush fires, that would be much like the state recovery fund that in case of companies that go out of business, that every insurance policyholder have to pay? That's one question in order to alleviate our issue with the reinsurance companies that are pretty much telling everybody, no, stop. I can't write any more in policies. It's gotten so bad that even one of the companies that everybody would think is the one of last resorts stopped writing policies. That's Lloyd's of London. Lloyd's of London is not only not writing policies, they're canceling policies. And then the second thing is when I was in mortgages, one of the things that we looked at to, to evaluate risk was the FICO scores. And the FICO scores would always have 4 reasons why your score wasn't higher. So we would, and this is what the insurance commissioner was getting at. So the brokers, we would look at this and then we'd say, okay, how can I help my borrower get the mortgage he wants? So we'd say pay down credit card debts or pay off collections or something to get their FICO score higher. I would love to see the fire line companies be required by state law to provide why this specific property got the fire line scores that they got.
Okay, great. This sounds like a good line of questions for Department of Insurance. We had a few things. One of the things you do hear about underwriting in California is that you can't price in the cost of reinsurance by law. And you also hear sort of comparisons to the California Earthquake Authority and whether that might be a good model here. So those questions, as well as the last comment about more disclosure as far as why you get the score that you do.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Joel. And by the way, I know a lot of you have been standing much of this time or all of this time. There are a dozen seats in the front row. You can come up and you're welcome to do that and have a seat. So one part of the question was, what about, I heard it as a statewide reinsurance program that the state, that the state would fund to help insurers themselves be able to expand their coverage. Insurers do use reinsurers, right, to limit the insurer's loss in any given year. They buy insurance themselves. We don't let them pass that cost on to their policyholders because that reinsurance is there to benefit the insurer, and the insurer can choose to write whatever amount of risk it chooses and charges that full rate accordingly for its risk. So we don't let them to parse them out and then get some money back there and have that expense paid for by you. But in terms of the state having a reinsurance program, I believe Florida has such a program. You'd have to have really a statewide acceptance of such a program. We've talked about other things that would generate some costs to the state at large, right? If you had a tax rebates or mitigation opportunity to give people some of their expenses back through various means, well, this would be another one where the state would have to agree as a state through legislation to create that kind of program, to take state funding to, become part of the insurance industry. I don't know that, so this is just opinion. I don't know that we're at that place yet. Right now, the state has put in place the FAIR Plan. If the FAIR Plan loses money, then there's an assessment that goes to the insurance industry, not to consumers or state taxpayers. So right now, the means of having insurers who want to write the good business and not the high-risk business is that all those insurers have to participate in whatever experience the FAIR Plan has. So it's kind of, we just have a different structure here than the state compensating or creating its own reinsurance program.
And I'll address the similarity between the Fireline score and the FICO score that you raised. Obviously, the FICO score, your credit score and your credit reporting is federally regulated and pretty strictly federally regulated. What we would like to see in the Commissioner's proposal, as he mentioned, is to have the similar rights that people would have if they dispute their credit score, to being able to dispute their Fireline score, their wildfire risk score, so that if there is an inaccuracy there, they made a mistake or whatever it might be, that you know your score and you're able to appeal your score and you're able to identify what the factors were that maybe can help you reduce that score, and then have your insurance company give you time to reduce that score so that you don't get dropped. That's in general what the proposal is. I'd also like to address the lady's comment with regarding the ISO rating, the protection class rating. Just to clarify, the ISO is called the Insurance Services Organization. It's a national entity. It's not part of the California Department of Insurance. It does work for insurance companies, providing them with rating information. It also does the protection class score, which is the community-wide protection class of 1 through 10 score. But it also does the Fireline score, the 1 through 30 score.
Thank you. We'll do a couple questions here from the cards. One person asks, how many homes have actually been lost in El Dorado County from wildfires in the past 50 years? Do you have some information on that, Supervisor Heidel?
We would need to consult with CAL FIRE or our Sheriff's OES to get a 50-year type of number. What I can tell you, and many of us remember, the King Fire that happened 5 years ago. It was in the September and October timeframe of 2014. In that fire, there were 12 residential structures lost and another 68 buildings on property. So total loss was in the neighborhood of 80 structures for the King Fire, which included 3,000 people being evacuated and about 100,000 acres of property, I believe it was, that was involved. So 97,717 acres. So that's the last big fire we had in El Dorado County, the only one I can reference.
Thank you. Someone else asks, are California insurance companies that are canceling policies, can we invite out-of-state insurance companies into the state to compete? And maybe I'll broaden that a little to ask, is there any thought to changing the standards as to which insurers are admitted, so that maybe some of the surplus line insurers would be able to offer lower premiums because they'd have less risk? Or what about this idea of introducing more competition?
The state sets certain financial responsibility requirements that any insurer that does business in California would have to meet before it can become an admitted insurer. We don't want a situation where an insurer comes in, writes too much risk, and then goes bankrupt, insolvent. That does still happen occasionally, even though there are very strict standards in place. But to minimize that, there are a set of rules that generally apply nationwide. While we set many of our laws at a state level here in California in terms of claims handling or underwriting, financial oversight rules are administered by each state, but they're based on national requirements that are in place, so that the companies are generally very strong financially. We do have some new insurers starting to enter the state, and picking and choosing some small amount of policies to write as new business as they get started. And it is one of these things that will take some time for them to build up some momentum and to get some new interest, gets, new business written, because they're being very cautious. No insurer is looking to come in and write a lot of high wildfire risk at this point in time.
And if I could add, most of the non-admitted insurance companies have the financial wherewithal to become admitted companies in the state of California. They just choose to be non-admitted. Many of them also are affiliates of the admitted companies. And so they choose to be non-admitted so that they don't have to follow the same kind of strict rating rules, underwriting rules, and other rules that are in place with regard to performing on the insurance policies. And so and then in addition to that, they're allowed to charge higher rates, and that's why they stay out of the state. And that's been our experience with that. There are a few companies that would love to come in that don't have the financial wherewithal, but I don't think we want them coming into the state, as Joel mentioned, with the repercussions that could cause.
All right, one more card, and then we'll go back to folks in the audience. This person says that they have been quoted a rate 8.5 times their current rate, and which is the highest I've actually heard. They say they're 5.5 miles from the fire station, mitigated and defensible, yet still have a high score. What can they do further? This is something I hear from folks all the time. They're taking every measure they can. What more can they do?
I'll take that one for starters, and obviously you had some comments. In a typical market, the reality is where you weren't dealing with these fire issues, if you talk to 10 insurance agents, you would see variations in a proposal you were given for coverage, a recommendation you were given for coverage. In this market, it's really no different. I think you need to learn as much as you can, talk through the process with the person you're getting a quote from, and make sure that it aligns with the type of coverage you intend to have, and make sure that once you have that framework that you're using consistently the same expectations while you're shopping. I definitely encourage you to shop. Sometimes the DIC carriers, their requirements vary, so sometimes the framework, the expectations they have would require you to buy more coverage on the fair plan side to make the policies match at a greater level. So there are differences in the DIC policy, so again, it behooves you to shop as extensively as you can.
Let me just mention something about how insurance rates work. So it isn't based on by county or anything like that. It is based on protection class and age of home and wildfire score. So the variation is pretty wide between insurers, how much they charge in different wildfire scores. And the reason that the premium is different with each insurer is because all insurers' premiums or rates are based on on each insurer's individual loss experience. So if you have an insurer that hasn't written a lot of high-risk coverage before and didn't have any major losses in these last 3 years, from 2015 forward, if they escaped that losses that hit most of the industry, then their premiums are going to be fairly low still, even for high-risk scores. They're probably not looking to write new business, but they would have lower premium. The company whose premium goes up 5 or 8 or 10 times over, it's based on that company's loss experience for that level of risk score that they had statewide, right? So that includes whatever losses they had at that score in Southern California or up in Paradise or over in Napa, Sonoma counties. It all goes into all risks at that score. What is their loss ratio for homes at that score? and how much do they have to raise their premium so that they will be reasonably profitable going forward at that particular risk score. So you're lumped together with people of like risk, and your fate rises and falls with people of like risk based on the insurer's loss experience for similar risks.
Thank you. Next question.
Yes, my name is Lori Wilson, and I'm a resident of Pollock Pines and a Hurricane Katrina survivor. So I'm looking at this as a major crisis. One of the things that I'm wondering is, has anybody, after Katrina, they came in, they fixed, all the insurance companies did the repairs necessary, and a few months later, people were dropped, my family included. And we hadn't made a claim in 46 years on that house. Well, after everybody got dropped and the panic set in, the head of the Department of Insurance decided to have a powwow with the companies and said, you know what, thank you so much. They thought it was a thank you for getting their residents back in, and then he invited them to leave the state with their business, all of it. And they all came back, and my house had to be gutted and rebuilt, and in 14 years, that insurance has gone up $400 a year. And I think that something has to be looked at like that, because I'm a single woman, just built my life back up, and I'm probably going to have to walk away from my home because I can't afford this increase. And then another thing is, I get fined in Sierra Springs if I have 6 inches of debris on my ground. But the forest has tons. I'm on a Rubicon every weekend. I've had to call emergency services on my ham radio because I see a fire kick up, and in minutes it's crossing into the springs at the Rubicon because there's 2 and 3 feet of debris. There's all the trees that have not been cut down. Something's got to go. This can't be blamed on global warming or climate change. It's mismanagement, and somebody's got to step in because all of us are suffering, period. Somebody's got to step up for us. You're saying that they don't want to pay? Are they paying to play with you guys? Or are they paying, y'all charging so much that other companies can't come in? I mean, I got dropped. I'm on the FAIR plan. I went up about 2.5 times what I was paying. And I'm going up, I just been informed, 30% on April 1st on the FAIR plan. And I'm underinsured. And I also want to know what the FAIR plan is. If we had a Paradise fire tomorrow, is there enough in the FAIR plan to cover the people under the FAIR plan's cost? I heard it might be like 60 cents on a dollar. Can anybody confirm that?
Thank you very much. And it is absolutely unfair that folks like you are having to bear this burden. A couple of questions were in there. Number one, we heard the last one, of course, about the FAIR plan. And then there was also this notion that maybe costs and premiums will keep rising continually. What are the chances that that's going to happen, or do you think it'll stabilize?
As far as the FAIR plan is concerned, we have our own reserve, so we obviously that's where the majority of the premiums go towards, is building our reserves. If our reserves are exceeded in a catastrophic event, we are backed by we have the ability to assess the carriers that are selling property insurance in the state, so we're backed by their financial strength. So as far as having viable resources if there was a catastrophic event, I would see that being more than sufficient in what we could imagine. And as far as the rates, I'm not aware of any indication that's being considered for review. The items that we are looking at are discounts that we're trying to incorporate and some other enhancements to our products.
Just on that same point, there should be no issue with anyone that has a claim under the FAIR plan of getting 100% of their coverage, not 60 cents on the dollar of their coverage. There should never be an issue like that.
And further point, we talked to folks from Paradise on several occasions, and even today at our agent meeting, and everyone that was in that meeting today can attest to that Paradise loves the FAIR plan. Everyone there just couldn't say enough about the way the claims process worked, and so again, there's no question that we're going to step up in a time of need like that.
Yeah, so in terms of how premiums work, again, it really depends on whether we can stop having major wildfire years. And you made a good point until we take action to reduce the risk, things don't change. So insurance is just a reaction to risk. It pays a loss that has occurred, but as that risk increases, the cost to pay for that reimbursement, to pay for those losses, goes up. So it really comes down to state and federal and then community and individual level efforts to do something to mitigate that risk. And, I think our Assemblyman here and our Commissioner have talked about the need to up that effort, right, that had been kind of ignored for a long time. And now we see the devastation that comes from it. And hopefully we address those needs. And when we do, and when the losses go back down because of it, then your premiums will go back down. And so we're not here to just, to excuse insurers, but they simply charge based on the likelihood of them paying out. And they're looking to make a profit, so that's part of it. But their losses have gone up significantly. That's how they justify the rate increases. And, we need the losses to kind of even out and stop increasing each year to see the premium changes even out.
Next question.
Yeah, hi. I'm an insurance broker here in the county, so I see this going on all the time. I've been experiencing it now for a couple of years, and I've seen it gradually, the insurance marketplace erode. My question is, we have really a supply problem here. What is the state of California doing to address that problem? Are they offering tax incentives for insurance companies to come back in and become more competitive? We need more competition up here. We need more insurance carriers willing to come in. What is the state of California doing to incentivize insurance companies to come back and write business up here? That's question number one. Question number two, what is the state of California doing with PG&E about their power lines? An easy way to solve this problem would be to put them all underground so we don't have to deal with the issues with above ground fires. Get PG&E to underground all of their lines. It may take 10 years, but I don't see why you couldn't get the insurance companies to cooperate with PG&E and help in that undergrounding process and get them all done. It's a very simple process. It's time consuming. It's going to be expensive, and we have the resources here in California to address that, I'm sure. So we need to address the supply problem. We need to address the risk problem. The other problem we have is, I think every single homeowner in this meeting could completely clear their property, and the problem would still be there. The problem is up in the hills, up where the trees are. We have density up there that's incredible. We need to get the logging companies back here and get them to start logging out all the excess lumber that we have up there.
Absolutely. The situation we are in now is a result in many ways of failed policies on many levels, and you touched on a number of them. The inadequate forest management and the failure to have adequate oversight over PG&E to make sure that it kept its transmission lines in shape. I mean, my district includes Roseville Electric, includes SMUD. They're not having the same problems that PG&E is. Even other utilities like in San Diego, they have much better technology when it comes to being able to identify hazardous conditions well in advance, so then you pinpoint the interventions rather than shutting off power to 800,000 homes. Those are definitely the steps that we need to be taking. Now, as far as your first question about introducing competition, one of the things this bill that I mentioned last year does do, and Phil could talk about this in much greater depth, but it tries to incentivize insurance companies to come in and offer coverage by saying that if you do that, then in the event that the FAIR plan isn't able to cover its costs, so then has to draw contributions from the insurance companies, you get a credit if you were insuring folks in these areas. So we'll see whether that really meaningfully moves the needle or not, but there's certainly a lot more that needs to be done. Do you have anything else to add on this?
I'd just like to say, too, that for the FAIR plan, our goal is to not be needed. Really long term, we want to see the market be restored to a normal place where the carriers do come back and have a way to recognize the efforts you make on your home to make it fire safe, and those other issues are addressed. So that's really ultimately what we're hoping to see happen. And in the meantime, again, we're here as a stopgap to do everything we can to make it, we need financial strength to be able to pay the claims, but on the same token, we want to do everything we can to make your premiums as reasonable as possible in the interim. And we're open to feedback, we're open to change. Anything is being considered. We have spent a lot of time, getting comments and taking it to the table to see if these are reasonable ways for us to impact our pricing, to make it easier for you, the consumer. And again, these are things that we're working tirelessly every day. Sorry, it's been a long day too. To do our best to make things better for you while this situation is being worked out.
Back to the comment cards. It's great that the county is mandating that homeowners clear up their property, but what is the county doing to clear brush from public spaces and along the roadways?
So let me start the response on that. One of the things that we have had lengthy discussions with our Department of Transportation about is the responsibility the county has to step up and make sure we have defensible space along our roadways. So we recognize that's a big undertaking, but we are dedicated to try to make that happen. Now, I can't promise it's going to happen in 1 year. It's probably a multi-year process. So the way we usually do it is we look at the highest risk areas, the areas that are most susceptible to high wildfire interfaces, and those are the areas, at least in this first year of administration, we'll probably focus on trying to make sure defensible space along the highways is protected. So the idea of cigarette butts being thrown out, those kinds of things that starts a fire within the county right-of-way, that's what we'll be protecting against, but it's only within the county right-of-way. So we've got equipment that'll handle that, and that's the plan forward. So I can't give you any guarantees as to where those things will occur, but it's in discussion now, and the enforcement will start in the March, April type of time frame of next year. So we'll all look forward to it.
So just to give you a reference, the enforcement for vegetation management and clearing the brush, it all takes general fund. And the board has allocated about $700,000 for the year. And as you know, that $700,000, you can't do everything. Just to put it in perspective, it's going to be multi-year, and it's going to need more funding.
I'll actually add a note on this. A lot of the worst maintained lands are actually state-owned lands. And so I represent Folsom. They've got a tremendous fire department that does great work trying to clear up brush and keep the community safe. But a lot of the county and the privately owned property is adjacent to state property that's in terrible shape. And so all of their efforts would almost be for naught if this causes some sort of fire. And the state not only refuses to clean it up, but also you have to get special permission if you want to go in and do it yourself. So I carried a bill last year to give a private property owner or a local government the right to petition the state and to come to clear up land that's adjacent to theirs in order to make it safe. We got it through one committee, then it got held up in what's known as the Assembly Appropriations Committee. So I'm going to keep fighting for that, though, because it's a very important issue. Okay, another question for the county. Will the county be lowering property tax obligations since this whole fire insurance issue is causing homes to have lower market values?
So you may have seen on Facebook that our county assessor has put something there that you may be able to contact the county to lower your property taxes because of the fire insurance. Before coming to this meeting, I had a quick discussion with the Association of Realtor representative, and she said that there is some data that shows that the sales are being impacted, the price of homes are being impacted, but there is nothing that can be shared at this point. And if that is true, the county is going to take the measure to lower your property taxes if you initiate it. But at the same time, you have to be careful, because if you do that, any point that the price of homes go up, then the county assessor can come back and reappraise your home at that level, and your property tax is going to go up more than Prop 218 allows.
I'll just add, that's exactly what happened during the recession. A number of people received a reduction in their property tax assessments. That's the responsibility of our tax assessor to go through by state law and reassess properties consistent with value, what the market value is. But then people started complaining when the rates went back up because we got out of the recession, things got better. And so it is a two-way street. You have to be willing to understand that if things get a whole lot better, your rates in terms of property taxes are likely to go back up.
Another question for the county, and then we'll go back to the audience. This person notes that through our general plan, oak trees are protected, and so to make my home defensible, it might be appropriate to cut down some of those trees. How will that be addressed? And then she also says that it was really expensive to trim the oak trees on her property, so what can be done to address that?
So the basic provision for oak trees, if they're dead or dying trees, they need to be removed. But in areas where you have healthy trees within your 100-foot of defensible space, you have to remove the ladder fuel limbs, which typically is 6 to 10 feet from the ground. So if you remove those lower level limbs, you're compliant with defensible space. Now there's always special situations with terrain and other things that may not be the case, but we're not asking people to remove all of their trees, just to provide that ladder fuel removal on the healthy trees. And if you've got dead pine trees or dead oak trees, yes, they need to go because they are going to combust at a much faster rate than a live tree that has obviously some moisture content to it. So that's the basic answer there.
In the vegetation management ordinance that we have, it may require you to trim your trees. And yes, it is very expensive. If we have some grants available and our staff is in the back room, I believe we have some handouts and you can definitely contact the county to see if you can get some help.
Thank you. Question from the audience over here.
Oh, thanks. I have a question related to this issue of mitigation in open spaces. So a lot of, in my community, there's thousands of acres that surround us that are privately owned by a developer. He has done nothing on that property to address any of those issues. And I appreciate the new ordinance that I'm going to have Mr. Parker come out and clean up the 100 feet around my house, but that does nothing to address my fire line score. 100 feet does nothing. So even when they come out and clear the 100 feet next to my house, it's not going to change my inability to get insurance. So is there some provision that the county would address to force private property owners or developers with undeveloped land to clear their property to the point where it makes us be able to get insurance? And that's at the county level, right? That's at the county level.
Yes. The ordinance right now is 100 feet. So you're talking about acres of clearance, and not every property owner is a big developer who can afford that. So that affordability comes in as well. And also, if you look at the insurance companies, just the fact that you clear that area doesn't mean that you're going to be qualified for getting insurance. So there are other things that need to happen with the insurance.
That's true, but what Fireline looks at is fuel loads. So the fact that they look at 1,000 feet around your property and they assess fuel loads. The fuel, I can't do anything about it. I can't go onto his property and clear 1,000 feet. Only he can do that. But no one around him in my community can get fire insurance because he isn't clearing it and he's got no incentive to do it.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Definitely, that would be something that I would talk internally and see what we can do. But right now, it's just 100 feet.
Next question.
Yes, my question is kind of multi-leveled, I think. But Commissioner Lara said that he doesn't have the authority to X, Y, and Z, and what specifically he felt he didn't have the authority to do. And my question is with regards to the senior insurance, in this case would be Hartford through AARP, using AARP as a facade to be able to sell insurance. And, you know, we've had that insurance for a very long time. And plus 40 years, we've never had a claim of any sort. And I'm sure that there's a lot of other people that fall in the same category. But this
lifetime continuation agreement that's supposed to be in place if Commissioner Lara doesn't feel he has authority to hold accountable those kind of carriers who don't live up to those agreements, then where are we going? We're going absolutely nowhere, and we're just all spinning our wheels. And if they keep changing the goals as they go along because they want to reduce their risks, they come up with other, I'll call them excuses for lack of another term, these various reasons that they apply, they're even contrary to what they say they're applying, because they claim to use Firewise when in fact they go well beyond or bastardize the actual terminology and implementation of that terminology so that it suits their needs in order to be able to reduce their coverage even on people who have got otherwise perfect conditions, but yet you get dropped or you have something that's wholly unwarranted. And so if he doesn't have the authority to deal with these things, where are we? What are we left with?
Yes, the Hartford policy for the AARP program is a much different program than most of the rest of the policies out there that everybody has. Most of the rest of the policies don't have that guaranteed coverage endorsement. So what the commissioner was speaking to with regard to all those other policies, the commissioner does not have the authority to require insurance companies to write homes in certain areas or any areas. We can't dictate where they underwrite and where they write homes. However, the Hartford plan is a different plan. That's one I suggest you contact us about, because we've been able to get some resolution in many of those cases when the insured has contacted us, because it is a lifetime endorsement. There are some criteria that have to be met. You have to pay the premium, and there can't be you can't do something that creates an increased hazardous risk to your property. But if everything is remaining the same, then we don't believe Hartford, in this example, would be able to just say, because fire risk in general is larger in this area, that's our reason for voiding that lifetime endorsement. And we've been able to get some resolution to that. We'd have to look at your specific case, but I encourage you to contact us tonight, and we'll get your information.
We have a question here about Prop B, and the question is why this was rejected, but perhaps you'd like to speak more broadly to the relation of all of this to fire protection here in the county. And we actually have a fire chief from El Dorado Hills. Maurice Johnson is with us tonight. Their department does fantastic work. I should note that El Dorado County Fire is a separate department. It doesn't actually cover the whole county. But do you have thoughts on that issue, whether it relates to the proposition or whether it relates to fire protection in El Dorado County more generally? Measure B, correct.
All right. This one's really controversial, so I'll just jump in. I participated at it's called County Fire, but it's not a county government fire district, but it's called County Fire. I actually went to some of the County Fire Board meetings. They have their own board that runs the fire districts. And I was one of the people that spoke up and said that if you're going to pass a measure like this, people expect accountability, and they expect to know exactly where those dollars were going. We also asked, as a group, there were several of us there that asked for a limit, a sunset date on that property assessment, because if we found over time, if the fire district wasn't being accountable, it would sunset, and then the voters wouldn't reapprove it. It's harder when something is put in perpetuity just to undo something. So we felt that a sunset date was really appropriate. It turned out that the fire board went ahead and did not address those concerns. And so it's not that people don't support their fire districts. It's not that. But as taxpayers, I think we all want accountability. And there was just enough people that looked at that measure and didn't find the accountability in it and could not support it. So we do support our fire districts, definitely, but everyone wants to know where those tax dollars are going.
So my take on that measure, the fact that it failed is a little bit different. I think our residents and people are sick and tired of taxes and assessments. Everything is going up, your insurance going up, all the other expenses going up, and people want their government to just provide the services and become more efficient and effective. And they just don't want to see more taxes and fees.
Thank you. We have
Let me add one more thing, Kevin, because I worked with the El Dorado Hills Fire Department for 31 years, and people need to understand that if your fire service staffing is being reduced, you are putting yourself at higher risk, and you are basically going to see increases in insurance premiums because of response time. That's the reality of it. Now, I don't think that the Measure B proponents really understood the proper way to present it to the public. But if they had, I think it's something that the residents who are affected by that need to seriously consider. Because if you start losing your fire staff, then you're reliant on CAL FIRE to be your first responder, or an adjacent fire department to be your first responder, and they may have something else going on at the same time. The worst situation is emergency medical services, and that's the one that's the most in demand. So that's what I encourage people to look hard at these measures and try to work with your fire departments to make sure that they provide the necessary transparency and coverage that you want, but don't just turn things down without having your voice heard.
For the next comment card, this person says they were non-renewed by Nationwide after decades of no claims activity, and asks how many companies have pulled out of the market. Now, I know it's a little more nuanced than saying someone's pulled out of the market, but perhaps this is a good opportunity to revisit the importance of shopping around and explain why it is that one company might cancel your policy while a peer company might still be willing to write it.
Well, there's several reasons why some companies are still willing to write in certain areas and some aren't. Part of it has to do with what's called concentration. You know, the company doesn't want to have too many homes in any given area, so that if there is a loss, they suffer, too much of a loss to be able to cover that loss. So that's part of the reason. If they're writing so many homes, they may stop writing, say, oh, we've written enough, or they may decide we only can afford to write, X number of homes, and we have twice as many as that. So we're going to have to start reducing and non-renewing. And so those are just kind of the business decisions that they make. And there's no law that prohibits them making those decisions. With regard to any specific company, if you are non-renewed, obviously, we're trying to get more time to shop around so that you're able to look at all the different options that are available to you, whether it's the fair plan or non-admitted companies, but preferably in the admitted market. Shopping around, you can go to our website and identifies all the companies in the state that write. They may not write in specific areas, so it is worth shopping around to different agents and brokers, as well as going to different sites. The Fair Plan United Policyholder has a pretty good site, and we have some information on our website also.
Question over here.
My name is Tim. I'm a first-time homeowner. I bought in 2016. I was non-renewed earlier this year and have been referred to the California Fair Plan. I've tried through my home insurance, or through my car insurance and everybody else, to try to get coverage on my home, and nobody will take it for brush score. My question is, how long does it take to get on the California Fair Plan? Because I turned in my application a month ago and I've had no response. And then once I'm on the California Fair Plan, ideally, how much should we be looking to stay on the California Fair Plan if it's stopgap? And then how do we get back on regular insurance if it is not a comprehensive policy? I'm having issues with penalties for non-coverage when I'm applying to my car insurance company for umbrella policy and stuff like that.
Thank you. Yes, I've heard that a lot of folks actually are on the Fair Plan for a pretty limited amount of time and then go back. Is that right?
Well, so let me just start with the beginning part of that question, and I'll just kind of talk through the whole scenario the best I can. Unfortunately, the reality is today, and this is just from my perspective, and again, you can feel free to reach out to any of the brokers that are in the room or in the community. But when you have access to multiple carriers and you put in an address and it's a hard no, not even talking about what have you done to your property, really no other element than your address. It's a hard no from just about every carrier you can think of. That's got to change because there's no feedback. What are you looking for me to do differently in my property to make it more acceptable? It's just a hard no from this line, from this area and beyond. And so that's where it becomes to the FAIR Plan. And we're here to fill that need until that hard no loosens up, or until those carriers feel better about the variables, the things you've done to take care of your home. The process to purchase a FAIR Plan policy should, I'm not sure who you're working with, but it should not take more than a day. You can issue a policy today. And you have to put a 40% down payment today. That's the way it's structured. But you could issue a policy today. So I would encourage you to reach out to the local brokers. Maybe, I know there's some that would be willing to stick around afterwards in the back room as a resource. But that's what I would say and to explore. The other component is the DIC policies vary. The expectations they have, the requirements they have could require you to buy more FAIR Plan coverage. One could require you to buy more coverage than the other, so it would feel like your rate would be higher in one scenario versus another scenario with the FAIR Plan. So even though you're with the FAIR Plan, there's a dozen variables you can look at that would give you adequate coverage and just different rates. So hopefully that answered your question.
Maybe did I miss it about if folks are on the FAIR Plan, when should they start looking to see if there's someone in the private market that will cover them?
So again, and this is where I get the consensus, the culture of the insurance professionals in this marketplace, they want to do everything they can to help you find a better solution as soon as it's available. And we want that to be yesterday. There is no, that I know of, that better alternative in a majority of the areas right now. I'll give you an example of something that occurred over the summer. There's an admitted carrier that hadn't been writing homeowners insurance that decided to write homeowners insurance. It was around May, and they were unrestricted throughout the state of California. And myself, like the other insurance professionals in the room, watched this company say yes to properties that everyone was saying no to. The ones they said yes to didn't really make sense, but we were happy because it was a third of the price of the prior scenario. And the ones they said no to didn't make sense, but again, we just took the ones we could get because it was putting the customer in a better position with an admitted carrier. Well, 2 months passed and they realized, probably even less than that, they realized they were getting on risks that they probably didn't want, and they changed their underwriting guidelines to exclude propane. So that knocked out everybody in El Dorado County, for the majority of the county, as eligible for that particular policy. So it's been a complete roller coaster. Every insurance agent and broker I talk to, they want to find a better solution for you. Right now, we're at that point where this is what's available. There's a gentleman that's been waiting for a question back there too. I don't know if we.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me just add one thing to that. So the Department of Insurance on our website has a top 10 tips for shopping for residential insurance. And that is the situation that many of you are in. If you've been non-renewed, or if that premium increase is so massive you want to shop around, your alternative to accepting that increase is to find a way to contact every single one of those insurers until you find someone else who will write you. And it is possible. I talked to a couple people tonight already that did exactly that and didn't find anyone. So it can happen, but you shouldn't give up easily and just, accept that you have to go into the FAIR Plan. As Phil says, they'd rather that you found coverage in the marketplace. They're not there hoping to get business. So it really takes a diligent effort. Most agents, and we certainly want you to do all you can with your local agent. agent might represent 10 or 12 companies maybe, but there are more like 50 companies writing coverage in California for homeowners business. A couple of them may write your risk depending on where you are and what your other business is. It's pretty tough to find that coverage. And we're here tonight to be honest with you and give you honest, straightforward answers. So it's tough, but you shouldn't give up until you've tried that entire marketplace. And even through that, if you want to go to a surplus lines agent where there's no restriction on the price and there's no backup plan like the California Insurance Guarantee Fund, but maybe you might hit a price that is affordable if they're willing to write you. It's all takes a real diligent effort that might not pay off, but if it does, it could save you, a lot of money. And it is something that, I recommend you do. Obviously, most of us don't like to think about insurance at all. And here we are in, an evening event. You're having to come and think about insurance, and it's a big problem in your lives. But the one thing in your control to do is to make sure you've shopped for every available insurer that writes homeowners business and made sure you got a no, a hard no as Phil called it, before you settle for a fair plan policy. And at least check out if you do get a yes, what the premium might be. So it's some homework that nobody would look forward to doing. We don't like to think about insurance in the evening either. But it's something, you're in a tough position. We know that. And this is kind of your best chance at maybe making it a bit better.
We do appreciate you and the commissioner being here to talk with us about insurance, though. We have a question over here, and I'll just say we have 15 minutes left, and I want to get through as many as possible, so let's all try to strive for concision. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Assemblyman Kiley. My name is Paul Gilchrist. I represent Division 5 for El Dorado County Fire Protection District. I also serve on the local Fire Safe Council and El Dorado County Fire Safe Council. I'd like to make a couple comments, and then I have some tough questions that I'd like answers to that I've heard from people that I represent, both from the Fire Safe Council perspective as well as El Dorado County Fire, okay? So first off, I have a great story to tell. I took personal action to clear defensible space in our area. I have a handful of examples where people have had their fire insurance reinstated after hardening their home and providing defensible space around their properties. So that's good news. And it's all taking no lightly and pursuing what is required for you as a homeowner to protect your property and not depending on government to do that for you. So that's the good news. Now, on another side, in Cameron Park and backing up to Shingle Springs, we have the Pine Hill Preserve. And in that preserve, we have federal land as well as county land that is owned and is responsible to provide a protection for rare plants as well as public safety. In that regard, I believe, and what I've heard from people I represent, is they would like government from our local, state, and federal perspective to look at the policies and the plans that are in place to come back and readdress those plans and how it is hindering protection for the homeowners while balancing rare plant preserve. That is something that needs to be addressed locally in this area. My question, so I'm also a former PG&E employee. I've heard some comments from that earlier. PG&E has been derelict in their responsibility for clearing their public access areas. Our state government, which you represent, sir, is also derelict in their responsibility to hold those organizations accountable. I will also say our county officials are somewhat derelict in their responsibility as well. We need to stand up. I'm not a big proponent of government intervention. I'm pretty much an independent as that goes, but damn it, you guys stand up, do your jobs, and hold those accountable to protect the lands and our environments. I had a Holocaust survivor walk to my home today, present sweets, and encouraged me that she said she lost her property and everything she had once in her life before. She will be damned if she allows that to happen again. So, sir, I look to you to stand up and do what's right for the citizens you represent.
Thank you, sir. It's very well said. And I'll tell you, it's when folks have no choice, when you're get PG&E and that's your only option. It's precisely in that circumstance when government oversight and accountability is needed most, yet that's where we've had it the very least, where you've had documented negligence on the part of PG&E for many years, and the state government has looked the other way. And so I understand your anger, and you're absolutely right to be angry. And not only that, but we pay more than twice as much for energy costs, electricity costs, than anyone in the country. You know, so we regulate to the hilt on everything except when it comes to safety and reliability, which is exactly backwards. So I understand your anger, and I can tell you that I will continue to do everything I can to change things so that we can have a safe and reliable and more affordable power supply. Does anyone on the county level want to comment? I think that you sort of said it all.
I do.
Okay, Lori, sorry.
I just got a text message from PG&E for the next power shut-off that starts on the 26th. What is that, Sunday? So, Saturday, it's coming again. Yeah. I know that I'm getting sick and tired of it, and I think that as supervisors, we're going to be having some serious discussions about what we want to do. I know I want to bring those discussions forward. I'm watching other cities and counties take action, and I would like to do the same. So please know that it is on the top of our minds. Please know that.
Sorry, no questions from the audience. So we'll move on to the cards. And by the way, PG&E's CEO said this is the new normal. We're going to deal with this for the next 10 years. That absolutely cannot be the case. We had a question about the use of prison crews in vegetation management. Is that something the county's making use of?
Sure. Right now, the county is going out to an RFP for the inspection of the vegetation management, and we are looking at CAL FIRE because they have the resources to do that for their services, and then this is going to be an additional service that they're going to provide to the county. And right along that, CAL FIRE uses the Growlersburg, which is the extension of their paid staff, and the cost to the CAL FIRE, and if county goes that route, would be very minimal for vegetation management and removal. So that's all I have to say. But great idea. Yes, we got to use those resources. We can't just pay into it and not get something out of it.
Specifically to prisoners, the sheriff has used prisoners in the past. I understand he's discontinued that because it takes a lot of staff time to monitor the prisons while they're out there cleaning up. And basically, we have a staffing issue in terms of having enough deputies to patrol and do the public safety aspect of their job, so that it's an added burden to try to make that happen. But we did do it in the past.
This commenter says they received a very high quote, but then questioned the insurance agent further and was able to raise their deductible while reducing their rate by 2/3, and suggests maybe this is an option folks can consider. Is that something that you'd recommend people look at?
Well, first, well, that's quite a reduction. We do suggest that anyone that has that option of raising their deductible, it's generally a great idea to do so. Obviously, you don't want the deductible to be more than you can afford if you were to have a loss. But I'll mention that many insurers give people a discount as part of their rating plan for not having had losses, and then often have a surcharge if you've had a loss. So you really want to avoid, unfortunately, this sounds like another spiel for the insurance companies, you want to avoid using your policy for anything other than a loss that is really significant, right? Because your premium varies based on your loss experience, and your eligibility to move to another carrier or stay with the carrier is based on your loss experience. So it makes a lot of sense to carry a high deductible and only use your insurance coverage for those really expensive losses, a major water leak or, fire or something, not for kind of maintenance type claims, as they call them, something that you can afford to take care of yourself. You get a little reduction in your premium, and it keeps your eligibility intact.
One more quick question on the card here for the county. There were several questions about opening more fire stations in the county in order to meet this 5-mile requirement, and one person mentioned there's even a vacant fire station within a mile of their home. How would you respond to that?
So, to reiterate, the El Dorado County does not provide fire service. So depending on what fire district that's going to fall under, you need to contact their board members. And if it's in El Dorado Hills, we have a chief there. I'll be sending everyone over there and just figure out which fire district it falls under, and then you need to contact their board and chief.
Is there anybody here representing them?
Sorry, no questions from the audience, please. I will say that there are resources in back from Fire Safe Councils and from CAL FIRE. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for being here. I live in Placerville, and when I want to go to Diamond Springs, I take a little road called Cedar Ravine. On that road, there is such a mess, and it is county, it's EID property. And so I have a couple questions. Is why does EID, and I hear it's not the only place, where they have spots of land, and in between those pieces of land, people live there. So even if I lived on some of the land surrounded by EID, I would go and clear and do everything great. Doesn't matter. My house may burn down because EID's land is just such high fuel loads. That's one thing. Number two, I heard the gentleman who does marketing for Fair Plan make a comment that Fair Plan is not a permanent solution. I had purchased my property in July of 2018, and with it I purchased insurance from Merced. Okay, in December I got notice from Mr. Lara's office saying they're insolvent and you have till January 1st or January 2nd to purchase more insurance. I worked with 3 brokers. He tried to get quotes from about 8 to 12 different companies. Nobody would insure us. And we have a house with a concrete roof, and it's stucco. And we also have a lot of work cleared. And we are on Fair Plan, not because I love Fair Plan and you guys are such great guys. I'm on Fair Plan because I don't have a choice. So your comment about it's not a permanent solution, I plan on every year going back to my insurance broker to see, but I don't think that's going to happen until we are without a wildfire within the state for quite a few years. And that may never happen again. So I would like to hear from the county, and I'd also like to hear from FAIR as to what they mean by that. And then the last question is, what kind of training does the state require those lovely people who come when you're getting your insurance and they inspect your house and they look and they make sure that nothing's falling off your house, but they know nothing, absolutely nothing about fire clearance, mitigating fuel loads. They don't look at that at all. They don't look at what you're, how you've limbed up or how you've removed trees and dead trees and that type of thing. So I'd be interested, is any of the legislation you're working on include that the insurance companies must come up with better trained individuals when they come and check your house?
Well, let's get a quick answer from the county and from the department, and then we'll take one more question.
I can go for this one too. EID, Alvarado Irrigation District, they provide your water. They have their own elected board. So I encourage you to go to eid.org and contact their board members and their general manager. Sorry, I don't have better news for you.
I'll speak to the fair plan component. You know, a trend, I'm looking at reports because obviously the dynamics have changed so much this last year. But I'm looking at a report that's reflecting an old trend that's basically saying that the fair plan has a high rate of policies that cancel early term, which basically means within the first 6 to 12 months, because they find a alternative in a normal market situation, in a competitive market situation. So that's a positive thing. But I would tell you that I believe that from about December on, if we're looking at the trend from December to December, if we drew a line in the sand, there would be a very low amount of early term cancels from the fair plan, because I'm very aware, and I stay very aware of what's going on in the marketplace. And right now, today, for a big portion of this market, there are very few options. And the brokers I talk to, they all use raters that have multiple carriers built into it. So in one foul swoop, once they input your information, they can get pretty valid and accurate rates back. And again, that's where, and not every broker's appointed to the same folks, but if you talk to a few, you're probably going to get, upwards of 50 options. And again, and even some redundant options, so you'll get a second pass by the same carriers. So again, that's what the state is today. And the fair plan, if there's alternatives January 1st, you can switch, you can cancel your policy and jump right on to the new policy. There's no the term short rate, you're not short rated. You can cancel your policy effective immediately and start a new policy if it's available. And that's what we hope the case to be. It would be great to hear some feedback from some of the carriers to see really what's missing. What can we do differently?
Okay. Final question.
Hi, my name is Robert Combs. I'm a retired fire chief and former president of the Fire Prevention Officers Association for the county. I spent 20 years as a fire marshal here in the county. And what I'd like to do is address 3 issues that have contributed to this problem over the years. The first is the insurance industry itself has traditionally set insurance rates based on ISO ratings. ISO is centered back east. They don't have the fire problems that we have here with vegetation and wildland fires. So ISO's, sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback. ISO's status for evaluating fire risk has been very antiquated for quite a few years. As an example, an ISO rating is not a rating of your fire department, it's a rating of the entire community, including the road infrastructure, the water infrastructure, your fire department's capability, your county infrastructure as far as DOT and roads and so forth. They have not taken into consideration fire-wise communities, rural water supply systems, things of that nature. So right before I retired, I went to a seminar where ISO was attempting to restructure their scoring matrix. And so I had an opportunity to meet with the chief of ISO at the time, and I started asking him questions about fire-wise communities, vegetation management, rural water supply systems. He didn't know anything about it. They are completely oblivious to what we're doing here in Western United States to try to mitigate this fire plan or fire issue. And so because of that, all the efforts that we're taking with the fire safe councils, the rural water supply ordinances, things of that nature, are not being recognized to affect our insurance rates. So that's the first thing that we need at the state level for the legislature and the insurance commissions to work with ISO to recognize what we're doing. As an example, the fire code requires every residence to have water available to put the structure out and prevent it from extending to the wildland, and vice versa, to be able to fight the wildland fire and prevent it from impacting structures. The fire code has required fire water for many, many, many years, 20 plus years that I'm aware of. However, El Dorado County has allowed subdivisions to come in, be built in rural areas with narrow roads, without adequate circulation, having dead-end roads, and no fire hydrants. Now, the fire code allows a homeowner to install a rural fire or water supply system based on National Fire Protection Standard NFPA 1172. And it specifically states that when you're in a rural area, that is the same practical effect mitigation to the fire code. However, the insurance companies don't even ask or look at that. So in the county, we passed a rural water supply ordinance. There's documents that will show you how to install that system. It's a standalone tank that can be installed on your property that meets the requirement of NFPA 1172 and therefore meets the requirement of the fire code for water supply. So if you're getting canceled because you have no hydrant in the area, this is a potential mitigation, but you're going to have to educate them to those issues.
Thank you, sir. This is great information, but we need to wrap it up.
Okay, just one more thing if I could. The other issue that we've talked about, and this is probably the #1 factor in ISO, is your fire department rating. Now, the local government fire departments, as the county has made you all aware, the county says we're not in the business of fire protection. That's true, they are not. However, over the last 20 years, local fire department agencies, municipal agencies have lost funding to state ERAF shifts, PERC funding for response into national forest, the hotel tax, et cetera, where money was shifted from local government fire departments to various state agencies, predominantly schools. As a subsequent mitigation to that, the state passed things like Prop 162 and various other things that reinstated that funding to those local government fire agencies. However, they didn't give it to the local government fire agencies, they gave it to the county. And once it becomes a general fund revenue, the county siphons it off to do whatever they want, and the fire agencies don't get the money back. So you wonder why all your fire agencies are going bankrupt and having to go out for tax revenue. It's because the money that was stipulated by the legislature to come back and refund your fire departments has not been given to the fire agencies.
Thank you very much. And you put your finger on a really important issue, that we have not given fire protection the priority it deserves. And I can tell you that you do see these shell games in state government all the time on a lot of different issues, and it's unacceptable.
Kevin, can I make a quick
Okay, quick comment from Supervisor Parla, and then we're going to call it a night.
So I would agree that there has been some shifts in funding and things, but some of the statements that were made just now are not quite accurate. And I would recommend that you go onto the Mountain Democrat and search for our CAO, Don Ashton, made a very clear statement. It's very easy to understand where that funding goes. And we don't have time, and honestly, I could not recite it to you. It's quite lengthy and it's very detailed. Go on the Mountain Democrat website and look for Don Ashton's recent letter about the PILT fundings and Prop 172, and it explains exactly where it's going. I really recommend it.
Yeah, and certainly don't blame the county for what are often the state's games that it plays with our tax dollars. So I want to just thank everyone again for coming tonight, for your patience in the late start. I'm sorry we weren't able to get to all the questions, but staff is going to be here answering questions in the resource room back there. You can also add your name to our email list, and we will give you updates on what's going on with the situation here. I want to thank all the participants, the working group, the supervisors, Department of Insurance, the commissioner himself for being here tonight, and thank all of you for helping us to find a path forward on this very important issue. Have a good evening.